Welcome to Natu Reads, an audio library of revolutionary texts. Scripting the Change. Selected writings of Anuradha Ghandy. Inchampalli-Bhopalapatnam Revisited. The National Highway 7 leads out of Nagpur towards Chandrapur, a journey which a bus covers in about 3.5 hours. The road is rather straight, and the land on either side is undulating, with large patches of fallow land. Considering the fact that one is in the countryside, for vast stretches one sees no signs of settled habitations, and particularly noteworthy is the absence of grazing cattle. Chandrapur, a city where once upon a time the Gond Rajas used to reign, is now bustling with contractors of various types. From Chandrapur to Balarshah, an hour's journey, there is a sea change in the scenery, with considerable construction activity along the highway. One can see drab gray concrete structures all over the place. The road is crowded, with trucks going up and down, and the belt is the hub of industrial activity in the area. Larsen & Toubro have set up their cement factory at Awarpur. Manikgarh Cement, a Birla concern, has come up at Gadchandur, and there is already an old ACC cement factory in the area. The pride of the place is still the Ballarpur paper mills, a Tapar concern, which, after depleting the forest in its vicinity, has crossed Alapalli for bamboo, and is also importing from Madhya Pradesh. After hearing so much about the forests of Chandrapur and Gadchiroli, one wonders where they are, for even after leaving Balarshah, there are no forests to be seen till Ashti, an hour's journey away. From Ashti, the bus climbs, and one is in the highlands, in the midst of the long-sought forest. Magnificent teak trees can be seen, but it would be wrong to call it a forest in the real sense of the term, since large parts are actually replanted forests with a commercial purpose. In the course of the journey from Balarshah to Nagapalli, which takes about 3 hours, we counted 16 trucks, heavily loaded with timber going out of the forest, and this was a Sunday. In fact, the trucks are the only traffic one sees on these roads, apart from the ubiquitous official jeeps. The Wenganga River marks the end of the Chandrapur district and the beginning of Gadchiroli district, created only in 1982. A short while after crossing the river, the bus is stopped, and some of us, it is easy to distinguish the locals from the outsiders, are questioned by an inspector, armed, accompanied by a posse of Havildars. The Naxalite menace in the district has brought out the police on a war footing. The seminar being organized by the Committee for the Protection of Democratic Rights, CPDR, an organization known for its exposure of police repression against the forest dwellers in the district and its legal aid to those arrested and harassed, including local organizers, was reason enough to bring the armed force out on the road. The seminar, one has misgivings in using such a pure academic term, was held on 23 to 24 March, under the auspices of the CPDR Chandrapur Gadchiroli. The seminar was organized in the context of the proposed plan to build the Inchampalli and Bhopalapatnam dams on the rivers Godavari and Indravati, respectively. This project has created a controversy, and there have been attempts to mobilize local and outside opinion against the project, including the well-publicized Morcha organized by Baba Amte and others at Gadchiroli on 9 April 1984. The gathering was less of a seminar and more of a convention, where local people and outsiders gathered in Nagapalli village. By the very fact of its locale, the intention of the seminar was not to generate sophisticated discussions, otherwise a rigidly structured one could have been held in an urban center where the number of participants from outside and the number of experts would probably have been more and the press would have given a wider coverage. The point was, instead, more to have a a mutual exchange and sharing session with the local people and their perceptions regarding the dam. B. To serve as a rallying point for all those opposed to the dam. And C. To make the seminar the takeoff point for the rallying. The seminar began in the forenoon of 23 March with a formal inauguration. The gathering was small but unusual. Participants ranged from village level activists of the area to environmentalists from major cities. Civil liberties activists, political workers, journalists, lecturers, and lawyers were among those who traveled to Nagapalli to attend the seminar. The seminar itself was loosely structured. In fact, while three major themes had been demarcated, major dams in development, dams in the environment, dams in the people, once the discussion began, the themes got merged, and the discussion naturally flowed from one topic to another, with minor diversions attacking the police mobilization, obviously meant for the police who were stationed all around the compound wall. This form gave the participants a chance to set the trend and helped the local participants, unused to such a gathering and program, to also take an active part. A number of papers were circulated and discussed. The paper from the CPDR Chandrapur, Gadchiroli, elaborated on the entire issue of dams and their impact on the people and the environment, specifically in the context of the Inchampalli and Bhopalapatnam dams. Besides this, Achyut Yagnik presented a paper on the Narmada Valley project and development, while the Adivasi Kisan Shet Majur Sangatana, AKSS, the local militant organization of the villagers, presented a paper on the impact of the dam on the local people who will be displaced and also elaborated their idea of development. Mehta Patkar, Ahmedabad, sent a paper on the ousties in Maharashtra from the Sardar Sarovar Dam, while Sharad Kulkarni, Pune, sent a paper on tribals and dams. Ms. Bugaunkar, Amravati, sent a paper on dams and alternatives, and Shantaram Potduke, Congress IMP, and Satyavana, Independent MLA, also sent papers explaining the negative impact of the Inchampalli and Bhopalapatnam dams. Apart from these papers, a note was circulated on the Maharashtra Resettlement of Displaced Persons Act, and fact sheets giving basic information on the two dams were also distributed among the participants. The nature of the participants also determined the language used at the seminar. The mixed group compelled the discussions to become a dialogue in several languages at the same time. To communicate with the villagers, a mixture of Gondi and Telugu had to be used, apart from the discussion which was carried out in Hindi, Marathi, and English. This only reflects the complex situation that is created when mobilizing such a diverse set of people. The problem becomes more complex in this particular case because the villagers in South Gadchiroli do not even speak a dialect of Marathi. Instead, they speak Telugu. The tribals speak Gondi or Madhya in Telugu. Cost of Big Dams. The first paper, titled Dams, We Are Damned, with its focus on the economic and ecological analysis of water use, was presented by Vijay Paranjpe. In this paper, Paranjpe presented a cost-benefit analysis of big dams, wherein he proved that a. The official cost-benefit calculations are inadequate and faulty, b. Cost-wise, big dams are far more expensive than estimated, and c. The ecological damage caused by big dams is permanent. In the 20th century, the size of the dams being constructed in India and other parts of the world has grown larger and larger, giving up the principle of least interference in the hydrological cycles of major rivers. Moreover, no serious attempts have been made by the government in India in recent times to do a realistic and objective techno-economic analysis of these dams. By 1985, the government had incurred an expenditure of 19,331 crore rupees for thousands of irrigation projects. The impact of these projects has not been commensurate with this expenditure. Construction costs of big dams have escalated, and delays have added to this problem. As a result, the cost of providing water for irrigation per hectare for major and medium dams works out to 7,224 rupees and 1,757 rupees respectively. In spite of the cost efficiency of small dams, the government's allocation of finance has been biased in favor of big dams. Experience has shown that in the last 35 years, the underutilization of irrigation potential created by big dams is higher when compared to that of small dams and groundwater. Similarly, although hydel energy is a renewable source, free from all known forms of pollution, the cost of generating hydel power has gone up from 7 paise per unit in the 1960s to more than 30 paise per unit today. In the case of single-purpose dams, where only electricity is generated, the cost would be even higher. The environmental costs which are not taken into account include the problem of waterlogging, salination, floods, the depletion of forest resources, and soil erosion. The impounding of large bodies of water has had effects on the geological structure of the Earth, as in the case of Koyna Dam and the Kariba Dam, Zimbabwe. Siltation is another major problem, and a survey of 11 reservoirs in North India showed that the actual incidence of sedimentation is 2 to 5 times the rates assumed in feasibility reports. Within 30 years, the Yaokuo Reservoir in Japan experienced a loss of 85% of its storage capacity, while the Nizamsagar in Hyderabad has lost 70% of its storage capacity already. Submergence, the construction of approach roads, and the rehabilitation of displaced persons have all led to large-scale deforestation and the shrinking of wildlife habitat. Official estimates have always underestimated the cost of compensation to be given to the displaced, and, in most cases, the compensation has been too low. Hence, Paranjpe argued the case against big dams and for the small dams, since, in the case of the latter, the magnitude of problems are on a much smaller scale. After Paranjpe's paper, in the first session of the seminar, the debate on the nature and concept of the current state-sponsored development began, specifically in the context of the proposed Inchampalli and Bhopalapatnam dam projects. A strong and articulate section among the middle class in the Vidarbha region of Maharashtra, of which Gadchiroli is a part, are actively in favor of the dam project. This trend was clearly and forcefully presented at the seminar. The main arguments in favor of such projects revolved around the opportunity presented by them for the development of the local people and the region. Firstly, it was argued by Girish Khobragade, RPIK, that this project is a golden opportunity for the local people, who have hitherto been neglected and live in extremely backward conditions, who are shackled by primitive technology and culture, to break out of this bondage and join the mainstream of development. The popularly used argument to oppose the dam that the tribal culture is likely to be destroyed came under severe attack, since it amounts to wanting the tribals to stay in their loincloth permanently. It was argued that all cultures have to change with the times, and that the tribals from Gadchiroli need not lose their ethnic identity through migration. The tribals and other villagers in the region will gain considerably from the project: water for their fields, better agricultural practices, jobs, education. In short, they will progress. For, quote, the forest dwellers, even evacuation from their traditional habitat is worth the development that awaits them, end quote. An oft-repeated argument was that the fact that the opposition to the project has so far been articulated by already established sections in this region shows their intention to keep the tribals as primitive exotica. This argument has also been given by several educated, influential tribals from Nagpur and other cities. Secondly, it was argued quite forcefully by Datta Pandre, a local journalist and Congress S worker, that the project will lead to the development of the region. In the context of the long-standing grievance of the people of Vidarbha that the region has been neglected, this argument cannot be taken lightly. Given the fact that recently there has been a major debate about the setting up of development boards and the demand to fulfill the backlog on investment, any move to oppose the project is seen as an attempt to perpetuate the backwardness of the region. The project would lead to the development of the backward districts of Gadchiroli and Bastar, besides providing much-needed irrigation facilities in Andhra Pradesh. The development is seen primarily in terms of irrigation facilities, jobs for the local people, and electricity. It was argued that with the pressure of population, traditional methods of irrigation no longer suffice. Technical arguments about how the reservoir will help to raise the groundwater level were also given in support of the project. Thus, the argument in favor of the project sprang from mainly these two reasons, and was inextricably connected with a conventional understanding of development. Fate of the displaced. In contrast, other speakers pointed out how the above arguments are based on assumptions not supported by reality. The fate of those displaced is miserable. Promises of rehabilitation, however inadequate, are also not kept by the governments. For example, people displaced by the Konya Dam in 1961 have still not been rehabilitated. Sharad Kulkarni pointed out in his paper that the merely mechanical rehabilitation measures have led to many social and cultural problems for the tribals displaced in western Maharashtra. Similar examples of the impoverished conditions of the people displaced, especially the poorer among them, were also quoted from the Sri Salem project in Andhra Pradesh, the Narmada Valley project, etc. The CPDR paper pointed out that rehabilitation is viewed primarily as the payment of compensation for lands and property lost. The rights of the people, their needs, or their development are never considered when planning such projects. Taking this argument further, several speakers raised questions on whether these dams lead to the kind of development envisaged in the proposals put forward in official statements. It was emphasized that even if the damages caused to the environment and to the dislocated people are kept aside, the actual benefits from the projects tend to fall far short of the official claims. Further, it was argued that the benefits go to the larger cities, while the people living in the vicinity of the project tend to get nothing. The electricity generated from these big projects goes into the national grid, while the water irrigates fields far away from the dam site. The villagers near the Pawana Dam, for instance, are facing an acute shortage of drinking water. In the course of the discussion, it was also pointed out that the decisions regarding the location of such dams are often political, a result of the lobbying from groups in a particular area. The Inchampalli-Bhopalapatnam Dam project is a decision emerging from the water dispute and the bargaining between Andhra Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, Orissa, and Maharashtra. This, then, has to be justified by the technical/administrative personnel, and hence, the neglect of the environmental consequences, faulty planning, problems of rehabilitation, etc. Since the conventional view that such projects mean development of the people is strongly inculcated in various strata of the population, opposition to such projects becomes difficult. Yet the people's perceptions of the process of development is changing with their experiences, as pointed out by C.V. Subbarao. In every state and region, there have been agitations for the sanctioning of such projects. Politicians vie with each other to get the project sanctioned in their district/state. State nationalism was mobilized in varying degrees to get the Duliajan oil refinery and the Visakhapatnam steel plant sanctioned, accompanied by the inevitable gheraos, agitations, and police firings with the resultant loss of life. Now, in Duliajan, the fight is between the locals and the outsiders. Skilled persons from other states were employed to run the refinery for jobs in the refinery. In Vizag, it is between the steel plant authorities and the evicted people, with a repetition of police firing, again resulting in the loss of life. These big projects, by their very nature, make existing cleavages sharper, while whatever developmental benefits are generated are siphoned off by those sections that are in a position to do so. These crucial issues get blurred, and the fight is on extraneous issues which have little bearing on the problem at hand. Anti-People Development Program. The argument that the existing state-sponsored development program is anti-people was most clearly put forward in the Adivasi Kisan Shet Majur Sangatana (AKSS) paper titled The Path to Real Development, Agrarian Revolution. In this paper, it was argued that in a class based society, founded on inequalities that emerge due to exploitative relations, it is futile to expect that the development policies of the state, whichever government may be in power, will benefit the vast masses of the people. The past 38 years have seen a development policy with slogans from Garibi Hatao to modernization, but the people, essentially, have not progressed. For the tribals and other villagers in the district, development has meant alienation from their environment as well as increasing restrictions on their rights. The nationalized forests have been handed over to the contractors and the tapars for commercial exploitation. While the dam will mean the displacement of thousands from the district, the benefits of electricity and irrigation will flow to a handful of big farmers and industrialists. Without a redistribution of land among the poor peasants and laborers, and without taking industry out of the control of the big industrialists and the imperialists, the benefits of such projects cannot reach the people. Hence, an agrarian revolution is a prerequisite for the development of the people, for the elimination of poverty, and for the growth of production in India. The AKSS called upon the forest dwellers to oppose the two dams which will ruin their already precarious lives even further. Paranjpe has persuasively argued the case against big dams and in favor of small dams. The cost efficiency of small dams and their advantages in terms of health hazards, water management, and the impact on the soil are undeniable. Paranjpe also argues that, quote, the farmer will not be obliged to the bureaucratic and often corrupt system of canal water distribution, as observed in the case of large and medium dams, end quote. And also, quote, power from microhydel plants will be utilized for local requirements in terms of light fuel, mechanical irrigation, small scale and cottage industry, etc. End quote. Implicit in this second argument is the assumption that the benefits of the smaller projects will naturally flow to the poor. Also, it is argued that the smaller projects are more amenable to local control. But given the eco-political structure of India from the village upwards, the villages are not homogeneous communities which, if given control over these resources which are generated, will distribute them equitably. The inequalities in the social structure mean that local control will eventually imply the control of local landlords, kulaks, or industrialists. The existing state cannot, or is not, going to hand over control over the utilization of these resources to the poor peasants or the workers. In any case, without a transformation in the land relations, irrigation facilities have little meaning for the impoverished peasantry. Large versus small. The debate between the large and the small is essentially portrayed as a debate between centralized, large-scale technologies and decentralized village-level industries with appropriate technology. It has also been seen as a struggle of the powerful few to rapidly exploit the natural resources and the people's efforts to protect these for their own survival. This concern for the small traces its theoretical paradigm to Schumacher's small is beautiful thesis and to Gandhi's concern for the development of autonomous small communities without taking recourse to the large-scale technology and large-scale exploitation of natural resources. This is a model of society in which appropriate technology is used, wherein ecological damage is minimized and decision-making is decentralized. While it is true that the concern for the small in technology has arisen from the horrifying situation that the monopoly industries around the world have created with their monopoly over scientific research and technology, as also the impact of the sophisticated technology which they have forced into the more backward third world countries under the guise of modernization, what must be remembered is that the world is already tied up into a network dominated by imperialism, and it is impossible to reverse the course of history and take society back into the past. The struggle against imperialism cannot be primarily a struggle against its technology, but has to be a struggle against the political and economic system of imperialism itself. Also, as Ben Crow of the Radical Science Journal, while commenting on the Center for Science and Environment's report on the state of India's environment, has remarked, quote, Advocacy of the small stems in part from a general concern that small scale producers who face dissolution, or at least partially from their means of production, throughout much of the Third World, should have their interest represented. But concern for the fate of the small scale producer needs to be distinguished from an uncritical support of small scale traditional technologies and relations of production as a way forward. It is by no means certain that the maintenance of traditional relations with nature and with wider society will best serve their interest. End quote. This one sided emphasis on low technology, if adopted uncritically, could lead to a technologically static situation in the country, leading to underdevelopment. Revolutionary China, under Mao, adopted the policy of walking on two legs, the one being small, labor intensive technology for consumer items, for example, and the other, high technology for basic industry. The basic concern behind this policy was the technological and economic development of China in the process of satisfying the basic needs of the masses, utilizing their labor power and their existing technological knowledge and expertise. The question of the type of development is connected to the wider political question of who controls society, which includes not only the natural resources, but also the means of production, and hence the question of policies and who benefits from them. The question of the utilization of natural resources is determined by these policies. The debate on the ecological degradation does not perceive the environmental question as one strand in the wider political question of the structure of power and control in our society, or if it does, it makes it the central question. Hence, ecology tends to become an issue in itself. But surely, the question is not merely of control over natural resources, but also of the control of the state structure, the bureaucracy, the armed forces, and the economy, which includes nature, technology, and labor. It is only when the masses gain control over this entire mechanism of society that they can utilize their power to choose the technology and the development projects that will lead to a more equitable and democratic development. This is a wider political question, and a broader political movement has to subsume the other issues, whether they be those of technology or of wages. The seminar concluded with a public meeting for which people had come from places as far away as Pomragad, walking through the forests for fear of the police. Police intimidation, denial of permission to hold the meeting till the last day, threats to villagers, forcing people who were coming to go back, could not prevent the meeting from being held on the grounds behind the Panchayat office, the venue of the seminar. A small meeting was also held for all the participants to work out a consensus on the issue of the Inchampalli and Bhopalapatnam projects and a further course of action. At this meeting, it was agreed by all the participants that on the basis of existing information, it can be stated that these two dams are likely to have serious ecological consequences and also disrupt the lives of the local people who would be displaced. Given the understanding that the existing developmental policy of the government is anti-people, the benefits of the projects are not going to reach the majority. To confirm and verify these conclusions, a technical team headed by Vijay Paranjpe has been set up to investigate the impact of the two dams in detail and present alternatives to the government if necessary. At the same time, local organizations, Project Virodi Sangharsh Samiti, Jungle Bachao, Manav Bachao, and Jan Jangriti Samiti have decided to begin a campaign to make villagers aware of the impact of the project.